who set me free. Hallelujah. Death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Our theme of this entire retreat is spiritual feet. We learned on Thursday with Greg Thomas what this good news we carry is, the death and resurrection of Christ, that we may have eternal life and be reconciled to God. And then we learn after that about global missions, that we are supposed to go to all the earth, every nation, tribe, and tongue. And then we brought it home yesterday with Greg again and talked about how we can be evangelizing and witnessing in our own communities, our schools, our neighborhoods, and elsewhere. And then we talked about how we not only supposed to go to people and simply bring them the good news, but also to walk alongside them and disciple them, as Kyle Youngkin talked to us about yesterday. Now, to bring all of this together, let's bring it even more personal. Tonight, we won't be hearing sermons, but we will be hearing a lot of stories from people from various stages of life: high school, college, young mom. So before we go into it, let us open with a word of prayer. And while I pray, Matthew, if you could please pull up our first testimony, that'd be great. All right, let's close our eyes and bow our heads and go to the Lord in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, from the heavens, I come before today, for you are so good and so faithful to us. Lord, you deserve all the glory and the praise for how great a salvation have you bestowed on us. And because you have lavished your love upon us, now we are called to go and make disciples of all nations, extending your love to those around us. So Lord, as we listen to stories and testimonies of how you worked in all these high schoolers and college students' lives tonight, that you need to touch our audience's hearts, and that may they as well, if you still will, get into ministry and participate in your great commission. So Lord, we pray that you may do a great work tonight. Bless our time. We pray all of this in the precious name of Christ our Lord. Amen.
Hi guys, my name is Quinta. If you don't know, I'm gonna be a senior this upcoming fall, so 12th grade. So Brian asked me to come on here and talk a little bit about ways that I've been able to serve as a high schooler, and then I'm also gonna talk a little bit about like missions and I don't know, other stuff. I also want to point out that I'm not using a script or anything, so I hope this isn't too like scatterbrained, but I'm just gonna say what I'm thinking. So yeah, I'm really grateful to have been like given the opportunities that I've had to serve, and being able to use the gifts that God gave me through those. I think that's a really special thing. So I'm gonna start off with ways that I've served in the church. So one, I guess, gift that God has given me is being able to work with kids. I really enjoy working with kids, just being able to build those relationships and be a part of their journey to knowing Christ and making that decision for themselves to follow Christ. Being a part of that decision and that journey for them is really special to me, knowing that I, through God, am able to lead them towards Him. So one way that I've been serving is by working in the nursery on Sunday mornings. I've been doing this, I don't know, I'm really bad at estimating, but a few years now. I've been working in the nursery Sunday mornings, like during the service. And not only is it just fun for me, because I like watching kids and playing with babies because they're so cute, but it's also super cool knowing that me doing this is a blessing, not only for me and for the kids, but also for like their parents, because the parents get to go and listen to the sermon, and that's what coming to church is for. And so I think it's just cool. This is like an easy-ish way. It's in my comfort zone, and it's a way that I can serve that I really enjoy. And I just think it's a great ministry. The next thing is playing piano. I play piano for the Chinese Fellowship worship team on occasion. And it's definitely something that I didn't really want to do at first. I've been doing it for like, oh gosh, I don't know, like 2-3 years, I want to say 2 years. But definitely at first it was out of my comfort zone. It was sort of like this, I don't know, it was like weird to me. I was like, worship team, that's like an adult thing, like I'm just a teenager. That's weird for me to be playing on a worship team. But now I'm super grateful for it. And I definitely see it, like my mom always told me the whole reason why I've been in piano lessons for like 10, 11 years now is so that I can use it to the glory of God. And that's something that at first I think I took for granted, but now I'm really learning to appreciate like the gifts that I have now. It's just such a waste to keep them to yourself. Using them for something good, especially to praise God and bless others with it, is just something that's so joyous to me, and something really important to me. So I'm just really grateful that my parents didn't let me quit piano all those years ago when I wanted to, because I hated it, but now I love it. So yeah, so that's a big thing too. And then next, there have been a few instances where I and some other youth group people have been able to help other people around the church. So for example, one time, my sister Anthea and I don't know if you know Abby Kapishki, we were able to go to an elderly woman's house and like help her clean up her house and her backyard a bit. And then afterwards, we like got to eat together and just hang out and talk to her. And we were able to help her in that way. And then she was able to pour her wisdom into us. I think that's something that's super cool, being able to talk to like people of all ages and different generations. People have such different experiences, and everyone always thinks that they like know everything, but then having someone to be able to pour new wisdom into you is something really, really cool. So that's just something that I've been learning, that serving, even if you don't want to serve in the moment, it always like comes back to you. So like in that case, we were able to help serve her, and yeah, we helped her clean up and whatever, and it was great. But then it went so much deeper than that, and she was able to pour into us as much as we were pouring into her and into her needs. So it really goes both ways. I think that's something really special about serving. It's not always as shallow as, oh, I don't want to serve and I'm just doing this for them. It goes way deeper. The impression that it leaves, it goes way deeper than that. So next I want to talk about ways I've been able to serve in the community. One big way that I've been able to serve that stuck out to me right away was a program called Whiz Kids. Whiz Kids is a volunteering opportunity that I go to every week, every Monday night during the school year. I basically just go to an elementary school and hang out with elementary schoolers. We get to play games with them, eat dinner with them, read with them, and then there's always a short lesson and discussion time. And that's really like the most important part of this whole program. A lot of these kids come from pretty rough backgrounds, and it's honestly sad to see them have to deal with like hard family situations, stuff like this at such a young age. But I think the most important thing for me at Whiz Kids is step one, just to build relationships. It doesn't have to we don't always have to be talking about the gospel and about God, but building those relationships and becoming friends first. Like having the kids know that this is a safe place they can come to, and all the volunteers are safe people that they can talk to about whatever they need. So like I know I've been able to hang out with some of the kids, like outside of Whiz Kids, outside of Monday nights, and just go, get ice cream with them or whatever. So not only have those relationships just as like friendships been really special to me, but then obviously also getting to plant that seed of the gospel in them. A lot of them, like I said, their backgrounds and family situations aren't always super pleasant. And their families don't go to church and stuff. And so knowing that they at least have some sort of inflow of the gospel and some sort of interaction with what God's love is like, that's something really cool to me and something that I always try to focus on when I go there. And then also just like volunteer opportunities in general. So like, for example, some youth group kids were able to help out with like the backpack, like I don't know what it's called. But if you know like the Hoover High School and like Meredith schools, like packing school supplies for them and things like that. Those are really good ways, not just in that case, not just to, get them some school supplies, which is great. But like I said earlier, it goes so much deeper than that because now they have an impression of what God's love is like from us, and their view of our church has changed now. They can see God's love through us and the church's love to them. And that's kind of really the whole point. So yeah, those are some main ways that I thought of that I've been able to serve. I think when I first started looking into ways that I could serve, I was always sort of nervous because I think I sort of underestimated myself because I am a high schooler and because I am younger. But then it's also good because I can help and relate to, for example, if I'm working with elementary schoolers, I can relate to them and I can relate to what they're feeling probably better than, someone older. I don't know. There's always ways that God can use you. And that's just something that I was able to learn through all these opportunities. And that's just super cool. Like no matter what your gifts are, how old you are, your background, anything, God can always use you. So next I want to talk about, I just want to really quickly talk about some missions, like trips that I've been on and able to serve in. So the first one, I went to Texas with a team from our church, like 2 years ago, I want to say. We went to Texas, drove down there. It was like 19 hours. It was terrible. But we were at this college campus, actually. It was the Rio Grande Bible Institute. And I really, thinking back now, I did not know what I was getting myself into. We got there and I knew we were going to be doing work projects, but we were doing work projects, like service projects there, like every single day, all day long. It was exhausting. We were all tired and dirty at the end of the day. We seal coated roads. So I guess that was cool. I've never done that before. And then a group of us also helped to build this little swing set, hangout area for the students just to hang out at. And I know some people were building stuff on the roof or whatever. I don't know. Just a bunch of these crazy work projects. It was, like I said, something that I definitely was not used to doing, especially on a missions trip. But it was also cool because we were able to interact with the college students there too. That was something I was nervous about. They were in college. I was in high school. They speak Spanish fluently and they don't speak that much English. And so I was kind of nervous, not just on a communications level, but I just feel like we didn't have much in common. But then on the very first night, they welcomed us girls into their dorm room and they made us food and we had a little party and hung out. And it was we had been we were just old friends or something. It was so nice. And it definitely helped to calm some of my nerves. I think that was definitely an answered prayer from God. It was just super cool that they knew what we were doing there. And then we also felt so loved and welcomed by them. And so the whole trip was just, that was kind of my first, I guess, official missions trip. And I'd always heard about my sister and my dad going on missions trips. And finally, I got to go on one, and I was really nervous, but God definitely answered my prayers. And it turned out to be a great time. I was able to learn so much from them despite all of our language, cultural, whatever differences. But it just really showed me that, no matter what language we spoke or our backgrounds or whatever, we all shared our love for Christ. And that was really what brought us together. And that was super cool just to see, how we could both love on each other because we had Christ in our hearts, if that makes sense. And then next, I'm going to talk about Lakota, which some of you might have heard of. Lakota is a trip that the senior high youth group goes to every summer. And it's a camping trip. And basically how it works, I've only been once, but basically how it worked was we got there and then we were kind of like camp counselors for these kids that came. And then so each of the high schoolers would like partner up with another person. So I was with Abby Kapishki, which was super great because she had gone before. She knew what she was doing. And she definitely helped to calm some of my nerves. But so us two were together, and then we got to be camp counselors to like these 3 girls, and we were basically like their parents for a week. We watched them 24/7, make sure no one gets hurt, whatever, play games with them, do crafts, eat with them, slept in the same tents, like everything. I wasn't the most excited to go on that trip. One, because fun fact, I hate camping. I don't hate it. I don't prefer it. I don't like sleeping in a tent. I don't like bugs. It's just not a good mix. I'd rather not camp. So I was already nervous about that. But then the thought of like that alongside having to lead these other kids that I didn't know at all at the beginning of the week, and then having to like I said, basically be their parent. That one's kind of really overwhelming to think about. And like I said, Abby was a huge help to me, and it ended up being a lot of fun and a really good experience. But it also kind of goes back to what I said about Wiz Kids, like building those relationships with those kids, being a part of their journey of accepting Christ into their hearts, and being able to, prepare these lessons and share it with them and all this stuff, and getting out of my comfort zone in that way was something that ultimately strengthened me as a believer as well. This also goes back to what I said earlier, but like I was doing all these things for them. I was preparing lessons and I was doing whatever. I wasn't really thinking about myself throughout that whole trip. But now looking back, all of that experience strengthened me as a believer. And yeah, I think that's just something super cool about serving, especially on these kinds of missions trips. God really pulled me through that trip. And now looking back, it just shows even more how he was maturing me in my faith. Yeah. So I'm going to finish up with talking about just living as a Christian, as a high schooler in today's day and age. Something that's really, really important to me that I wanted to share was my relationship with church people versus like people at school or non-believers is so different. And it's really, really important to me that I'm deeply rooted in my faith, deeply rooted in what I believe to be true, deeply rooted in the word and God's word. Because there's, especially like at school and stuff, there's so much noise, that's worldly noise that's coming from all directions, and people's opinions and people getting upset and drama and gossip and all this stuff. It's really, really important to be really well equipped for that. And like I said, deeply rooted in your faith, because then you know what you believe. You're not going to be easily swayed, because it's going to be really easy if other people are like sharing their beliefs with you or doing whatever. I don't even know. It's going to be really easy to be swayed and pushed into different directions and all that stuff. So finding a good group of people is really important. And that's definitely going to be something that I focus on going to college next year too. finding that group of people that's gonna build me up and encourage me, and then I can do the same to them, finding a good church to get planted into. And now while I'm still in high school, like youth group people and church people, it's such a blessing to be able to have that group that you're able to go to and talk about your spiritual faith, be vulnerable, open up, encourage each other, mourn with each other, all these things. That's just something that you can't find in a secular place, in such a secular world, especially at like school and stuff with like conversations and non-believers compared to my church friends are so, like looking back, are so shallow and so just messy at times. It's really important to know where your identity is. So yeah, that's something that I've kind of been thinking about, especially now going into the new school year. Just something that you always have to be aware of, to know where your identity lies. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had. But yeah, thanks for listening. Enjoy the retreat. Bye, guys.
Testing. Can people hear me? Let me see. Hello. Okay, Zoom. All right. Hi guys, I'm Matthew. I'm currently I'm gonna be in my sophomore year of college. So I was thinking Kalenta was just mostly talking about like what her like life living as a Christian. I was probably gonna thinking like interpret this speech as like, oh, how was my first year of like transitioning to college? Like did that interact with like my faith or whatever? I will say though, I only prepared wait, what is it? I prepared like an outline in 15 minutes, so this will be like kind of messy or like, but I thought that's, to be honest, that's best for me. I won't be very limited in that. But so like a lot of you guys, I feel like I grew up in the church, like ever since I was young, like I was taken to church. I was always with church kids. I was just like, oh, they're a very big part of my life until like maybe COVID hit or something like that, right? I grew up in like a sort of, there's like a bubble if you times think of that, right? Like there's a church bubble that like a lot of kids are in there. But when you like go to college, it's like a big reset. Suddenly, like you don't have a church. The people probably didn't follow you unless you're kind of lucky. If most likely, you're probably actually going to be mostly stuck with like secular friends from your high school. Those are more because like church is a lot more. I feel like people come from like a bigger area, not your high school, right? So that's a big reset, and there's like lots of overwhelming distractions because like going to college, there's like a lot of things to worry about. It's not just your like church community that's being affected, but things like, oh, you had to like study, and that might be like hard for you depending on how you did in high school. You can do work because a lot of people work on the side. College is expensive, things like that. Personally, I got like a part-time job, so I worked like about 10 hours a week, and that's like with another group of people of coworkers, right? You have to find new friends, like Christian or not, you still like often have to deal with like meeting new people. Obviously your parents are also not there. It's a plus, okay, I will admit that, but oftentimes they're the ones who like got you into, they help you connect with the church. I think a lot for like a lot of us, I feel like there's a dependence for like a lot of people that go to church. They're like, oh, I go there because my parents went there, right? And then suddenly once you go to college, they're not there. It's like they didn't have that drive themselves to go to church, and it's very easy to just drift away from that. And even like just like being in a new place, mental health is like, I would say, is even a big deal. I feel like there are plenty of stories out there where people struggle, even like drop out of college due to their mental health. There are so many things in college that you have to worry about that like sometimes looking at your faith, it's like, you can make it a very small worry in a sense. So in that sense, I always thought that like, from my view, that like community is important. there's lots of verses, right? That's like the Bible supports like we should be in a church community. Like Hebrews, I like put this down here. Hebrews 10, 24, 25. It was like, and let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another. And all the more as you see the day drawing near. I felt like, to be honest, there's lots of experimenting, right? Because there are plenty of churches and they vary a lot. My main connection probably was like I had one friend that came with me to Iowa State because I go to Iowa State, and they probably reminded me the most, or was the most constant reminder of like my faith or my morals, my just like my connection, like oh, this thing is important. I feel like even if you have like a strong base with so much diversity and so many other like noise that like Kalanta was talking about earlier, it's very easy to forget that. So let me see. But yeah, other than for like community though, fortunately college does have a lot of options. There are like many churches on campus and they actually do vary. There's lots of campus organizations as well. And all of them, they kind of vary as well. A lot of places will have, statements of faith. So if you want to like look into something that works for you, a good option is to like look at their statement of faith and just read and see like if you align with that. And there's again, lots of campus organizations, and a lot of them aren't even attached to churches, if that's like a big deal. So like you can experiment a lot. But there are also organizations that are connected to churches, so it's like it's easy in that way. There's like lots of options, and I feel like in the first like half of the school year, the first semester, I felt like it's very important to like try and find your community, because in my experience there are a lot of things, or in my experience there were times where like things didn't stick. I did join a Bible study like in the beginning of the year, and like back in my youth, and my parents like pushed me, they like made me join a Bible study before that, and I felt like it was easy to stay in there because like my parents also went to the same thing, and it's like I had people I already knew, so like discussion overall is very good. But like compared to when I did a Bible study in college, it just like I had to accept that like, oh, I wasn't getting much out of this. And I think it's just important to know that there are like lots of options, and like not all of them will work. So yeah, you want to try like a lot of things, even if you do feel like things are a good fit and you're like, oh, this is good enough. I would say that if you like reach and you move to a new place, don't just like settle on what you think is just like maybe good enough. Like try to find the connection, especially like another way to think about this is like sometimes you need to put in more time as well. I've had a friend in college, and that person was also looking for a campus organization to like find a community in. But like for the first month or two or so, when they went in, they didn't feel connected, because like it's still a bunch of new people. But the more time he spent in, the more people you connect with, you find your community. And I think time was really the factor that got him in there. I don't know, I'm babbling on and on. And I will also say like it's also easy to find community in a sense, like a lot of these organizations also like hang out outside of like church activities. So things like just like Bible studies, retreats, volunteering, they even like play games and hang out like normal people. Oh my gosh, right? But also I think a bigger focus for me is like, although community is important, I think like your own habits and dedication are more important as self, because like no matter what you do, you're gonna run into a lot of noise. Like even like I feel like a lot of people, you guys already experienced this in like middle school and high school, but college is like even more, because like since things reset, there are a lot more opportunities to interact with non-Christian views compared to Christian. For like, if you just don't reach out and you go with the flow, most likely, unless you're lucky, you will not run into like a bunch of Christian views or voices that align completely with that. So I think you need to have some sort of communication with Christ that doesn't like involve like other people like triggering it. So like, praying by yourself, reading the word on your own time, like following self-study plans to keep a base, especially like at the beginning when you're still like interacting with so many different people in college. And I think this is just like my opinion, but like I think it's important that like because important to like process a lot of these worldviews. Like college will challenge a lot of your views on like what's right and wrong. Mm, I don't know. Like I guess I don't have any examples right now, but like you will run into many different situations, and in that sense, I feel like, and a lot of your friends even will like be making these decisions. They will be challenging like they will have different opinions on you. That's like almost a guarantee. So you're gonna want to like actually have to process it, and I like suggest that like you'll use like multiple resources to like make a decision on like what you believe and how you act on that. So like you can ask fellow believers or like look up like how does this interact with the word, and just like even just like contact close ones. People, we live in an age of technology, right? So you can definitely still contact the people that are like your close connections like online. I don't think that's anything to be ashamed of, like you need help during college like that. And I just want to say that I don't think it's like, yeah, I don't think it's like good to ignore a lot of these like views and be like, oh, I'll just like ignore what they're saying right now. But I think like it's kind of hard because like there's this thing called like I don't know if I want to explain it. Like cognitive dissonance. It's like we don't like to like deal with the fact that we're like doing something that doesn't like align with our views. So it's like I think it's important to like avoid that discomfort. You just need to make a decision about like what you believe, look it up, because college will make you challenge it. Because like if you don't make that final decision, like, oh, I believe this because the Bible says this, even though people say this, then it's possible it's quite more likely that your views will probably shift to the people surrounding you, because as it's a saying that like, oh, your 5 closest friends are basically who you are, right? They make up who you are. um and even though, and you might say like, okay, but I don't want to like outright disagree with them, right? Because like college people are also, though they have different views, like just like normal people, it's like it's very hard to like debate with people. So I say like there's um even though you might disagree with them, I don't think like you don't have any right to judge them per se. So I wouldn't bring that. I feel like I'm babbling so much. So like, but Matthew 7:1-5 says like, judge not that you not be judged, for with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure. Okay, I think we get that. It's like, okay, don't judge other people based on like their views that you don't disagree with. But I think instead, a lot of times, as like Greg Thomas was like talking about 2 days earlier, if you guys were here, it's like a lot of times the most effective way to show people or like bring people over is to just like hold your views and just show kindness to them. There are so many, I have listened to like a lot of like student testimonies and like Christian organizations or whatever about how they like came to Christ during college. And a lot of times it's just that they just found Christians to be like the nicest, most welcoming people. They always help out when they're in need. They're just good friends in general. And I think I took that as like the main way to probably reach out to non-Christians, because there's, again, it's also in college, since there's so much diversity of like different people from like even different areas of the world or different areas in the country with different views. That means you have so much access to, or so many people that you could just like potentially reach out and impact their lives. So I would say just focus on being kind and just upholding your faith in a sense. Don't go against it, but don't attack people with it, I guess. I think that's kind of all I have to say, to be honest. All right.
All right, I want to sit on this stool so that I can see you all. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys, for letting me be here and for sharing a little bit about my experiences in college. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Grace, and I go to the University of Northwestern in St. Paul, Minnesota. For those of you who don't know where that's at, it's like 4 hours north of here. And so, yeah, I'm just going to share a little bit about some of the ways that God's been at work in my life, going to college, transitioning, and I'm going to tell a few stories. And I'm an Italian girl, and so if you know anything about Italians, it's that we share stories. So I'll share a few stories, just of like some of the, again, like I said, some of the ways that God's been at work in my life and some of the lessons that He's taught me throughout the past couple of years. So. First, I'll just start off by saying going to college was really hard for me. I grew up in Des Moines my whole life. So I was born here. I went to school, kindergarten through 12th grade in the same building, had really close friends. I actually graduated with Brian and Elise. And so just having a really cool community in high school was amazing. And I was just scared I wasn't going to be able to experience anything like that when I got to college. And so I remember when I first got there, I was living with 7 girls that I didn't know. I had no idea how it was going to turn out. I was very overwhelmed. I was in a new environment without my family. And I remember I called my parents every night on the phone, just sobbing because I was like, I don't think I can do it. I mean, I knew God had called me to Northwestern ever since I was 10 years old. I knew I wanted to go there. And I just felt at peace when I was thinking about the transition to college. But then when I actually was going through with it and when I was there, I just wanted to move back home so bad. It's kind of a feeling that's hard to explain. You just feel so unsettled and you just like start to doubt and question a lot of things. And through that time, I remember I heard a song over and over, worship song called Promises Never Fail. And it talks about how God's promises never fail, just like the title says, right? So He is always with us and He is so sovereign and faithful. And so we don't have to fear what the future brings because He holds us in His hands. And so I remember I would constantly listen to that song and I would pray and I would journal, just trying to like make sense of all these feelings and trust that God was in control and know that He had a purpose for me being at school. And so just trying to take it one day at a time. That's what my mom would always say, just take it one day at a time. And so through those first few weeks in college, God brought incredible people into my life. He allowed me to get to know my RA. And I had a lot of really cool conversations with her. She was super encouraging. She was just willing to pour into me in a lot of really cool ways and understand where I was coming from and acknowledge my feelings. And that meant so much to me, you guys. And then I also got to know my roommates. My roommates kind of became my best friends because there were 8 of us. And so you kind of do everything together when you're all new to this environment and you have no idea what you're doing. And so just grateful for that community that I had of girls that were, again, just willing to pour into me. And to this day, I'm still really good friends with a lot of those roommates and still live with some of them. And so just very grateful for that. And just it's kind of a testament to seeing like how God is faithful and how He sustains us. So I also want to just share another story. This one is a little bit heavier, and I'm going to school to learn how to become an English teacher. So that's my goal after I graduate. I graduate in December. And this story is about an experience I had at my very first classroom placement. And so as a future teacher at school, they oftentimes require you to go to these off-campus placements at different middle schools and high schools so that you can get some experience observing a teacher and you can practice teaching a lesson here and there. And so that's just, it's just a great way to kind of validate that you want to be a teacher and just to practice teaching in front of people. And so I remember I was 18 years old, my fall semester when I had just moved to Northwestern, and I was at a middle school placement. I was in a 6th grade classroom. And this was my first placement. So primarily what I was doing was just sitting in the back of the classroom, observing and taking notes as my teacher was teaching. And so it wasn't, like high pressure, high stakes at all. It was mostly just me like sitting and observing. And I remember it was my last day at my placement. And so I was there 2 days a week. and we had a substitute teacher, and I was sitting in the back of the classroom, and the sub was giving directions for the writing assignment that the students were working on. And I just noticed this one girl who was sitting at her desk, and she seemed very out of it. Like she wasn't aware of what was going on. She was sitting at her desk, looking down at her feet, and she was just like not interacting with anyone around her. And I could just kind of sense that something was wrong. And I didn't really know what it was. I couldn't really put my finger on it, but I just remember sitting in the classroom and I just prayed that God would give me an opportunity to be able to go talk to her, because I just felt like there was something that needed to be addressed, but I didn't know what it was. And so I continued to just sit in the back of the classroom, and I didn't want to, like overstep my place at all. But I remember I just felt this nudge, like this tug in my heart, and it was the Holy Spirit, and he was urging me to go to this girl. And so I walk up to her and I kneel down beside her, and I said, hey, is everything okay? I didn't want to try to push her to do the assignment or anything. I just wanted to make sure that she was okay. And she just said, she's like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm tired. And I wanted to believe that, but I just wasn't fully convinced. And so I said, if there's anything that you want to talk about, we can go out into the hallway and talk. And guys, like the look on her face, she was relieved as soon as I told her that. And we walk out into the hallway, and as we're sitting outside in the hallway, she starts telling me all these things about what had been going on at home. She long story short, I won't get into all the details, but she had been abused by her father. And so she was telling me all these things, and it's like heartbreaking hearing this, right? Because I am a freshman and I have no idea, like I have never been in a placement before. I've never encountered anything like this. I don't have any formal training on how to handle this situation. And this girl is just crying in front of me. And, so I remember like I'm comforting her. I'm like, everything's going to be okay. We're going to make sure that you're okay. And I walk her to the office and get to the dean's office, because I was the only person that was available at the time to talk through this whole situation. And I remember the dean looked at me and she's like, who are you? Like, just so confused as to who I was. And I explained, I'm like, I'm a college student observing, right? And then she looks at the girl and she said, do you want Miss Oliver to stay in the office while you, share everything, or do you want her to step out? And the girl goes, I want her to stay. And so I sat in there and, like watching her retell these details, it's just heartbreaking for me. And I like walked out of the school it was time to leave at that point. So she had said everything and then I had to leave. So I walked out and I was just sobbing, right? It's just like, I have no idea what was going to happen to her. And to this day, I still have no idea what happened. I don't know if she's still living at home or if she's still in school, but I have to believe that God had me there in that classroom for a reason. And so I just look back and I think about all of the like really cool ways that God was working in that situation. Like the fact that there was a substitute teacher really just kind of confirmed the fact that I could go talk to this girl. If it had been the actual teacher, I don't know if things would have looked different. It was my last day. And she was there in the classroom and she had been at school on and off. And so the fact that she opened up to me, the sixth grade girl. And so like you look at all these things and I just think about how cool it is that God was able to use me in that situation when I wasn't even anticipating that at all. And, I still think about her and I pray for her. And I do hope that she's doing well. But, I think that I hope this is an encouragement to you that you are not too young or unequipped to be used by God. And I know oftentimes it can be daunting to think, well, I have like no experience or like no training at all on this whatsoever. I've never done this before. It's a step out of my comfort zone. But even if you're nervous or even if you're scared, like God can use that for good. And kind of like what's been discussed the past few days, I think there's so much value in like planting seeds and showing kindness, like Matthew just said, right? Like we can display the fruits of the Spirit and we can love as Jesus loved when he was here on earth. And that can go so far. And so I just like want to encourage you in that, like wherever you're at, wherever you go to school or wherever you end up after you graduate, high school, I just want you to know that like you are never too young or unequipped to be used by God. And so just like seeking him and trusting that he can use you and like being in prayer and finding ways to serve him. I think that's just like something that God's been teaching me a lot about. And I know that he can do the same in your life. And then one other thing I wanted to share was this past school year, I had the opportunity to work in residence life. So I don't know if any of you have heard of an RA or if you know what that is or who that is, but an RA is basically somebody who like is in charge of a specific hall, like enforcing the rules, making sure that rooms are clean and visiting hours are enforced, right? And so I wasn't an RA, but at Northwestern, they have these really cool positions called ministry partners, and they're kind of like assistants to the RA. The only difference between the RA and the ministry partner is that a ministry partner focuses more on the spiritual side of things. So I actually had the opportunity to lead weekly Bible studies in my hall, which was really fun. We had a really cool community of girls that would come together one night a week, and we would read a passage of the Bible, and we would pray, and we would just talk through what God had been teaching us the past week or what he had been teaching us through the passage that we were reading. And I have to be honest, it was such a blessing not only to be there and to, hopefully, I blessed them, but to also be blessed by those residents, because there were times when I was feeling really down or discouraged, and they were always there to pick me up and just inspire me and support me no matter what. And so, I mean, this has been stated before here at the retreat, but it's like two-sided, right? There's the fact that, yes, we can be used by God and we can be a blessing to other people, but also be looking for ways that like people can bless you as well. Like there are so many people that want to pour into you. And so like, that is why it is so important to find community and to just be grounded in scripture and find those people who hold those same beliefs and values, because they will encourage and uplift and inspire you. Just as I've experienced. And so that's just been really cool. And then just like a few takeaways from what I've learned while being in school. This is going to sound really cheesy, but bloom where you're planted. I have oftentimes thought that, I'm only in Minnesota temporarily, and then I move back to Iowa and I'm here in Iowa for the rest of my life. Like that's my plan, right? And so I think, well, if I'm only in Minnesota for a few years, like I don't really want to get super involved or committed in it, in anything. And God's been teaching me like he can use you where you're at, and you don't have to like be confined to think, oh, just in the future I'll worry about that, or in the future I'll be more intentional. Like, no, guys, right now, like today, that is like what God is calling us to do, is to be faithful and serve him every single day, no matter where that is. And plans can change and goals can change, but our God is faithful and he never changes. And so like finding ways that we can serve others and we can be a light for him no matter where we're at. And so, if you're in middle school or high school, like you can still be a light, and it's not too early, you're not too young. Just blooming where you're planted and finding ways and seeking God to show you ways that you can serve him. And then just another lesson that I've learned is that Jesus is my ultimate satisfaction, and he is more than enough. I have experienced a lot and I've learned a lot these past 2 years in college, and there's going to be so many things that will tempt us and will try to distract us. And so those temptations and distractions are real and they're valid. And it is hard sometimes to say no to those temptations, but yet like God is greater and he's so much bigger, and like we can overcome a lot of those things like fear or nervousness, or if there's like things that we're afraid, this is a step out of my comfort zone, right? Like God can use those situations for good. And so just learning to trust in him, and again, just find ways that he can use you, and finding your gifts, finding your talents, and finding ways that you can just be involved, be intentional with other people, and love other people. I think that's so important. And no matter who you are, no matter where you come from or where you're going, like God can use you, and he just wants you to seek him with your whole heart. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Grace. That's going to be really hard for me to follow. um, I will sit here as well. Okay. I think I know most of you, at least a little bit. My name's Alyssa Yunkin. If you were here last night, you heard from Kyle, and that's my husband. We have 2 kids, Rowan and Chloe, and I think most of you probably know them and maybe know them better than you know me, and that's okay. Rowan will be 2 in September, and Chloe is almost 7 months. So a little bit about me. I graduated from Johnston High School and went to Iowa State after that. I studied statistics and then worked at John Deere for about 4 years. I know nothing about tractors or combine, so please don't ask me about that. I was on their analytics team, so did all the numbers. And now I am a stay-at-home mom with my 2 kids. And yeah, I grew up in this church. My dad is the pastor of the Chinese church currently, and Kyle and I have been helping out with the Chinese church youth group on outreach nights once a month. So we got to know a lot of you through that, which has been sweet. Growing up, I loved youth group, did all the retreats, trips. Clintha talked about Lakota. I'm also not a camping person, but I went because it's what you do, right? All my friends were going. Did small groups and just grew a lot in that. So Brian asked me to talk about how I am serving the Lord. And I love this question because the first thing I want you to know about serving the Lord is that it looks very, very different based on your season of life. So you heard Clintha and Matthew share about, well, Clintha in high school, and then Matthew and Grace share about in college. And now after college, everything changes when you get married, if you have kids. And so I had to really think about how am I serving the Lord now? And the primary way I want to share with you is by taking care of my kids. So back up a little bit. Growing up, I thought that I would, graduate high school, go to college, graduate college, probably go to med school because I wanted to be a doctor. And my parents did not pressure me into that. My mom is on the call right now, so she's hearing this. My parents are wonderful. They let me choose what I want to do, but I did grow up wanting to be a doctor. And so just wanted to be very ambitious in my career. And then life took a different turn after I met Kyle, worked at John Deere, wanted to grow in my career in that way. And then after having Rowan, God said, no, I want you to stay home. With the kids. And so long story short, that's what I did. And it's hard. It's much harder than working at John Deere or probably as a doctor. But God has blessed that. And that is the primary way that I'm serving the Lord right now. Another way, you've heard multiple people talk about community. And so after staying home, I've been blessed with a really good community of moms, both in this church and also through a group called MOPS, MOPS. It stands for Moms of Preschoolers. And I joined a year ago, and it's had a really big impact on my life. And then this year, one way I'm serving those moms is by being their numbers person. So tying in what I did at John Deere with now serving this community of mostly Christian moms. In that way, and you're hearing this right, I get to use Excel. How many of you know what Excel is? Okay, good. Most of you. I'm always surprised by the number of people who don't know what Excel is, but I oddly really enjoy Excel. And so I'm currently working on building all these formulas and programming and all of that into this way that I get to serve the MOPS group. And so where I'm going with that is I want you to know that God can use any gift, any of your passions, any of your hobbies, anything that you're skilled at, God can use that. I never would have thought that God could use something as, to me, trivial as a computer program to serve him. Some of you, Grace, tonight, I'll just pick on you for a minute. She has a beautiful voice and she's sang so beautifully over the past 3 days. Elise played the piano and it was wonderful. Not all of us can sing or play the piano, or Clintha mentioned being with kids. I know a lot of you guys like that too. Well, what if you don't sing or you don't like kids or, all of these things that seem to be serving the Lord in these big ways. If you don't have any of those, that's okay. What do you like to do? What has God gifted you with? That is something that you can use to serve him. It can be behind the scenes, and that is just as important as everything else. A few final notes. Aside from that, being home with the kids, I serve with Kyle in the nursery. We also enjoy being with kids and doing that work and coordinating volunteers. I already mentioned that we've been teaching the Chinese church youth group and have been really, really blessed through that time. And it's been so fun watching so many of you grow from, I don't even know, some of you, Stephen, I remember I met you when you were born in the hospital. Not to embarrass you, but it's just been such a joy to watch you guys grow in that, and Brian, to you leading the retreat and just seeing all of you guys spiritually grow in your faith. It's been really encouraging. So a couple of final things. Again, serving the Lord changes with your season of life. So a lot of you are middle, high school right now. Serving the Lord will change in your next step, whether that's college or finding a job or something else. And so let God guide you in that. And don't ever think, I'm going to be careful how I word this. Don't ever look back and say, oh, I served the Lord in much bigger or better ways back then. And now God has me here. God has you here in your season of life for a reason. And so, ask him to guide you and give you the strength to serve him where he's planted you. So yeah, that's all I have. And thanks for letting me speak.
Great. Thank you everyone for giving our testimonies. Okay, now so another great news. For the first time tonight, we're behind schedule. So with that said, we're gonna go on break now. We're gonna choose things before we come back at, give me a short break today. We're gonna come back at 7:31. So in the next 9-ish minutes, we gotta get two things done. First, so after we come back, we are going to have a Q&A session with our lovely testimony people tonight. Now, when we do that, I'll have any questions in the Google form. So if everyone doesn't mind, please pair up or get in groups of 3 and come up with one good question to ask our panel when we come back. So that's announcement number 1. And number 2, if everyone could come up to this area up here, we need to get a group picture before we forget. So yes, food and picture. Go ahead.